In the heart of ancient Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers fertilized the plains of what we now know as northern Iraq, rose one of the most powerful and influential civilizations in human history. The Assyrian Empire was not merely a conquering state, it was a laboratory of innovations that forever revolutionized how empires are built, administered, and maintained. Assyria's story begins modestly around 2600 BCE with the founding of the city of Assur on the banks of the Tigris River. This strategic location was not chosen by chance. Assur sat at a crucial point on trade routes connecting Anatolia to southern Mesopotamia, quickly transforming into a prosperous commercial center. The city developed around the worship of the deity Assur, from which the name Assyria derives, establishing early on the intimate connection between religious power and political authority that would characterize all of Assyrian history. During its first centuries, Assur prospered through a surprisingly modern commercial innovation, free trade. Around 1900 BCE, under the reign of Irishum I, the city implemented a system where private merchants, not the state, controlled trade routes. This liberal approach allowed Assyrian merchants to establish commercial colonies as distant as Cappadocia in modern-day Turkey, creating a trade network that prefigured the future territorial ambitions of the empire. Historians traditionally divide Assyrian history into three great periods. The Old Period, from 2600 to 2025 BCE, was characterized by this initial commercial expansion. The Middle Period, from 1363 to 912 BCE, marked Ashur's transformation from commercial center to regional military power. Finally, the Neo-Assyrian period, from 911 to 609 BCE, witnessed the creation of history's first truly universal empire. The transition to imperial power began in the 14th century BCE, when Ashurbanipal I declared independence from the kingdom of Mitanni and proclaimed himself great king, equating himself with Egyptian pharaohs and Hittite kings. This moment, around 1365 BCE, marked the beginning of the Middle Assyrian period. This was not merely a political declaration, but an ideological revolution. For the first time, a Mesopotamian ruler explicitly aspired to universal dominion, establishing the concept of empire that would influence all subsequent powers. The true architect of Assyrian power was Shalmaneser I, who reigned around 1274 to 1245 BCE. Under his command, Assyrian forces conquered vast territories, establishing control over crucial trade routes and implementing a strategy that combined diplomacy, intimidation, and brute force. His son Tukulti-Ninurta I took this ambition to its logical extreme, conquering Babylon itself and proclaiming himself king of Sumer and Akkad, titles that carried millennia of Mesopotamian prestige. After a period of decline caused mainly by invasions of Aramean peoples, Assyria resurged in the 9th century BCE under Ashurnasirpal II, inaugurating the Neo-Assyrian era. This period witnessed not only territorial expansion, but a complete revolution in the art of war and imperial administration. Ashurnasirpal established his capital at Nimrud, building magnificent palaces decorated with stone reliefs that narrated his conquests in graphic detail. These artworks served as both propaganda and historical record, communicating Assyrian power through a visual language that transcended linguistic barriers. The true Assyrian military revolution began with Tiglath-Pileser III, who came to power in 745 BCE, possibly through a coup d'état. This king fundamentally transformed both the military organization and administrative structure of the empire. For the first time in history, he created a permanent professional army, eliminating dependence on seasonal militias that had limited all previous states. His soldiers received standardized iron equipment from materials stronger and more abundant than bronze, allowing them to arm vast armies with superior weapons. Assyrian military innovations were revolutionary. They created history's first military engineering corps, specialized in siege warfare. They developed iron-headed battering rams, mobile siege towers with fire-extinguishing systems, and mining techniques to bring down walls. Their archers were protected by specialized shield bearers, while cavalry units provided unprecedented tactical mobility. This combination of arms allowed the Assyrians to conquer fortified cities that would previously have been considered impregnable. Equally important was Tiglath-Pileser III's administrative revolution. He reorganized the empire into provinces directly administered by governors appointed by the king, eliminating the semi-independent local rulers who characterized previous systems. This centralized bureaucracy, connected by a network of royal roads and efficient communication systems, allowed direct control over vast territories. The Assyrian provincial system became the model for all subsequent empires, from the Persians to the Romans. One of the most controversial but strategically effective Assyrian policies was the systematic deportation of conquered populations. Far from being mere cruelty, this practice served multiple strategic purposes. It broke local identities that could sustain rebellions, redistributed technical expertise throughout the empire, and created loyalty to the Assyrian state among uprooted populations. It is estimated that during the empire's final 3 centuries, approximately 4.5 million people were resettled in this manner. During the reign of Sargon II and his successors, the empire reached its maximum extent, stretching from Egypt to the Iranian plateau. In this period, the capital was transferred to Nineveh, which became possibly the largest city in the world, with defensive walls punctuated by 15 monumental gates. It was here that Sennacherib built his palace without rival, an architectural marvel, with more than 80 rooms decorated with carved reliefs. The last great Assyrian king, Ashurbanipal, who reigned from 668 to 627 BCE, bequeathed to the world a contribution that transcends his military conquests, history's first systematic universal library. Established in Nineveh around 650 BCE, this library contained more than 30,000 cuneiform tablets, organized by subject history, law, astronomy, medicine, literature, and religion. Ashurbanipal, who was literate in several languages including Archaic Sumerian, sent agents throughout his empire to collect and copy texts. His instructions to collectors were clear: bring any tablet that is needed for the palace, anything that exists, and rare tablets that you know that do not exist in Assyria. This library preserved for posterity masterpieces, such as the Epic of Gilgamesh, the creation story Enuma Elish, and thousands of other texts that provided future generations with an incomparable window into Mesopotamian thought. Ironically, when Nineveh was destroyed in 612 BCE, the fire that devastated the city ended up baking the clay tablets, preserving them for modern discovery. The collapse of the Assyrian Empire was as dramatic as its rise. Around 631 BCE, after Ashurbanipal's death, the empire faced simultaneous pressures from multiple directions. The Medes, united under Cyaxares, allied with the resurgent Babylonians under Nabopolassar. This coalition, taking advantage of internal dynastic conflicts, besieged Nineveh in 612 BCE. The capital fell after a brutal siege, and archaeological evidence shows the city was completely destroyed, with skeletons of defenders still found in the gates where they fell. Assyrian cultural influence, however, survived the political empire. Their administrative innovations were adopted by successor empires, Persian, Macedonian, and Roman. The concept of centralized provincial government, imperial roads for rapid communication, and permanent professional armies became standard features of all great subsequent states. Assyrian art also exercised lasting influence. Their narrative reliefs, which told complex stories through sequences of images, established artistic conventions that influenced visual traditions from Persia to Greece. The monumental sculptures of Lamassu winged bulls with human heads that guarded palace entrance became iconic symbols of imperial power. Beyond military and administrative innovations, the Assyrians contributed significantly to scientific and technological development. They were pioneers in iron metallurgy, observational astronomy, and hydraulic engineering. Their royal gardens in Nineveh, irrigated by elaborate aqueducts, may have inspired the legends of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The modern rediscovery of Assyrian civilization began in the 1840s, when archaeologists like Austin Henry Layard began excavating Nineveh and other Assyrian cities. These discoveries revolutionized our understanding of the ancient world, providing archaeological evidence for events described in the Bible and revealing a civilization of extraordinary sophistication. Perhaps Assyria's most important legacy is the demonstration that empire can be more than mere conquest. Through their innovations in administration, their systematic preservation of knowledge, and their synthesis of diverse cultural traditions, the Assyrians created a model of state that balanced centralized power with local diversity. This balance, though imperfectly realized, established precedents that continue to influence modern political thought. The Assyrian Empire was ultimately much more than a military state. It was a laboratory of administrative innovation, a preserver of cultural heritage, and a pioneer in complex state organization. Their achievements in government, art, science, and knowledge preservation established foundations upon which all subsequent civilizations built. When we observe modern governmental systems, public libraries, or even contemporary military organizations, we can still detect echoes of innovations that first flourished in the plains of ancient Mesopotamia more than 2.5 millennia ago.